Lee, did you have a question? Unmute yourself.
You could call that cake stories.
Cake stories, yeah.
I've got a question. I've got a question for you, Jeremy. I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I travel, and you had mentioned that was part of your life.
Mhm.
Is that a market that's static or expanding or contracting? I find it extremely helpful on long distance driving. And I know I have relatives and friends who listen to stuff because they commute.
Mhm.
Tell me about that industry. Is that, and your voice, I think, is fantastic. Nothing I hate more than to have a long audio book that I want to hear and the voice isn't as strong as would be ideal. Your voice seems really strong and can penetrate. You know, you're listening to road noise. You got to have a voice that overpowers road noise.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The industry has changed a lot since, I think it's called P2P, is a way of doing business online where if you distill it down to its essence, you're bypassing the middleman. You're going person to person in an industrial setting. So I had done voiceovers for years in other cities, in Chicago, St. Louis, and Seattle, where I lived. And it was always dependent on my agent. And I never had a setup at home. So my agent would call and say, I've got an audition for you. Can you come into my office, drop everything you're doing, come in, lay down an audition? So as someone who's working in hotel, restaurant, bakery, catering company, can I drop everything, run across town just to say, these crackers are crispy good, and then go back to work and not get the job over and over again? Like, that's the nature of the industry. And then what happened is technology improved, and people started having their own setups, learning their own software, becoming their own engineer, which I have to do, which everybody has to do now who's doing this. And then up popped web-based platforms that were portals for places for clients to go to find talent. So now what happens is there's probably dozens. I would say at a certain level, there's in the States, there's maybe half a dozen platforms. Some of them are subscription based, where the clients have to pay and the talent has to pay. And then you can, like a dating service, you can meet each other. There are others that are free for talent, but when you book a gig, you pay a percentage, to the platform, just like you would to an agent. So it's not just audiobooks, it's anything. This will be a fun exercise for you. Just go through your day consuming whatever you consume: audiobook, radio, podcast, TV show. Voice work is everywhere. It's everywhere. Things we don't think about, like, oh, someone had to design the magnetic strip that keeps your refrigerator closed. Someone says, I'm an industrial designer and I make magnets for refrigerators. Like, I never thought that was a job. It's like that in voice work too. So now it's democratized. So anyone can do it from home if you have the right stuff. And so one of the big, I live on Phillips Street on the west side, and it's a busy street. So one of the big obstacles for me, I have a really good mic. I built sound panels in my closet. I learned how to use the software to make everything sound good. But I cannot control loud trucks from zooming past my house. So I go into my closet and start recording, and I can't keep the noise from coming in. Like, having a true soundproof booth is a many thousands of dollar investment, $5,000 investment. And it's constructed with materials I don't have. So I just have a closet, and the sound panels that I made keep my voice from reverberating, but they don't keep outside sound from coming in. So I'm constantly not recording during high traffic times. And if it's really important, I wait until late at night when people aren't driving as much, and then record from 10 p.m. to 1 or 2 a.m. And then I can edit during daylight, which is how I'm doing it mostly now, because it's just too loud.
Any other questions or comments? Sandy?
So what really attracted me to this story was I had a neighbor who gifted us a surprise dinner from a restaurant. And I said, I'll make you a cake. And he says, yes, I want a carrot cake. Well, I'm not a cake maker. I thought you asked for the moon. So I spent a whole afternoon and I made my first carrot cake. And then it dawned on me that I should be making a lot of cakes. So I would make my homemade cake and I'd slice it up and I'd give it to a dozen people. And I would go around the neighborhood to friends, and it was so much fun delivering a surprise slice of cake. And then when I found out he was giving these gorgeous, beautiful entire cakes to people, I was just dumbfounded, because none of my friends would want that much cake. In fact, some people said, Sandy, don't give me any more slices of cake. So when you gave me a cake, it was like, I'll slice it up and give it to my friends because I'd eat the whole cake. So I was really impressed with your work. And my favorite story that I saw on Facebook about you was you took it to a fire department and gave it to them, and how touched they were. Once I tried to give something to a fire department, I couldn't find a way in to save my life. So I don't know how you made that entry, because I pounded on doors and walked all around. So you got to have an in. And when I saw you doing this, I thought, oh, he's starting a business. This is so clever. But it wasn't your business. It was all generosity. And that was just such a story for me. What I want to know is what you did in Chicago and what brought you to Missoula.
So in Chicago, I did theater and pastry. I opened a cupcake bakery that ran for 15 years. I was hired to, so it wasn't mine. I was hired to create it, and ran it for a few years, and then left, did a show. I taught theater at the High School for the Arts on the South Side. I worked in restaurants and high-end catering companies. I did some shows that toured. Did a show in Chicago that we took to. We took to New York. It was at 42nd and Broadway, but technically it was an off-Broadway show because it had 499 seats and not 500. I learned that. So I got to do some really exciting work theatrically and creatively in the world of pastry. So that's what I did. Didn't have mountains, so I started road riding, cycling. And over time, my shoulders just started gradually creeping up, and I was going through life like this, and a clenched jaw and a very defensive posture. And I've lived in big cities my whole life. But I think I was maxing out on population density and noise. And I had worked in Glacier National Park in the 90s as a baker, a seasonal baking job at St. Mary Lodge. And Montana got under my skin, and it set off this ticking time bomb inside of me, where I kept coming back to Montana on road trips. And 2004 and 2005, I did a residency at Western and created a show. I brought people in from all over the world, actors I had trained with in New York and other parts of the country, but they were from all over the world. And I had pitched this to this woman, Judy Ulrich. I call her Judy Montana, who runs the theater program at Western. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So for 2 summers in a row, I did this residency where we created a show, taught workshops, did physical theater training, and then took the show on the road and toured it. Took it up to the Canadian Fringe Festival. We took it back to St. Louis, where I had family and had taught at a small university. And in 2012, she reached out to me and said, yeah, how about you come here and teach full time? I'm like, there's my excuse to move to Montana. All right. So yeah, so I'm doing it. And I cut all my ties. I divorced myself from my agent. I did not renew my teaching contract. I extracted myself from some auditions that were active. I pulled out of projects. I rented out my apartment or my condo. And 4 days before I left to move here, the chancellor called me. It was an actual phone call, and said, so about that job. And I was like, uh-oh. And I just got that sinking feeling. Yeah, they had huge budget cuts and they killed that position altogether. And I had already extracted myself from my life. And emotionally, I was already in Montana, supposedly Dylan. So I brooded on that for a day or two, closed the blinds, curled up in a ball on my couch, sucked my thumb, ate a bunch of junk food, and realized, screw it, I'm going anyway. But I'll go to Missoula instead of Dillon. And so I just packed up my car and moved here. I didn't know anybody. I lived in my tent in the Lolo National Forest for 3 weeks and came into town with, got internet connection, had a laptop, printed off some resumes, house hunted. And within a few weeks, I got my first job making pastries for Posh, the chocolatier. So I was their pastry chef for a while, and then found a place to live with a bunch of other people. And that was my transition from Chicago to Missoula in 2012.
Well, that's great. We're glad you made it here, Jeremy.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm glad to be here.
Any other questions for Sandy?
So what does your family think of your trajectory?
They love it. I've had a really windy path. For a while, my parents were begging me to just move back to America because I lived overseas in several precarious places. I was in Ecuador when there was an uprising, and we fled to Colombia for safety, and there were bombs going off in Colombia, and they were like, please just come home, you know? So moving to Montana was no problem for them. And my sister, who lives in Seattle now, she was a total hippie and dropped out of high school. I grew up in St. Louis in the Midwest. She dropped out of high school and moved to Telluride to get high and pick chamomile blossoms from the mountains when there was nothing. There was no film festival. That nobody had even heard of Telluride. So her windy path took her to Bozeman for a semester, studying geology at MSU. So she's like, yeah, Montana's great. I'm a fan. So yeah, everyone, they're all good. A little worried about the bears, but I tell them it's okay.
Good. Thank you.
Well, you can tell your parents for me that Colombia and Ecuador aren't that bad either, really.
Yeah, besides the
Spent about 4 or 5
gastrointestinal distress that is sort of a constant there.
Wolf?
Fascinating story. I love these crooked pathways that people have. What always interests me, it's kind of a risky way, at least from my perspective, a risky way of leading a life where your income is always tenuous, your whole life situation is very tenuous. How do you deal with that kind of uncertainty?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I joke about with some of my theater friends that I know through improv. So I got into theater. I will get to your question very quickly, but I got into theater through improvisation, which is a very different way into theater than most actors I know take. So they get into it with the script in hand, with a director telling them what to do, with repeated rehearsals and getting to know this is what I do. And I got into it with nothing. Give me a suggestion, bust up, go. And so I think over the years, I've just gotten inured to this sense of not knowing and gotten really comfortable and intimate with question marks. And most actors I know are not comfortable with that. So I think there's just a predisposition temperamentally that I have where I'm comfortable not knowing. And it's really clear when you cross the line into this is not okay. I've had some friends that I've talked down off the ledge, metaphoric ledge, bawling. I'm 50 years old. I have $200 in the bank account and I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Yeah, like that type of question mark, the older you get, becomes less and less tenable. So I would say I'm very comfortable not knowing things, but I'm acutely aware of aging and what that could look like without savings and the practicalities of living. That said, like my brother's had a pharmaceutical sales job for 30 years and he is magnificently wealthy. And, the things that he talks about with buying his oldest son an Acura, and I'm like, duct taping my shoes. Every once in a while I get into this, what am I doing? And then I come back to, what? I don't need certain things. I don't have certain kinds of needs. I've got health insurance. I've got clean water. I've got a safe home. I can go to a movie when I want to. I can go on a backpacking trip when I want to. Like, I'm doing all right. So the question marks in my life seem less dire, maybe because I don't have as far to fall. Maybe because I'm just used to it. I'm not really sure. Yeah. I have had people tell me like, there's no way I could live the way you live. And I'm not like some dirtbag, living out of a van hand to mouth. I have some stability. But some people really see that as like wackadoodle fringe lifestyle, which I don't see it that way,
Yeah, I
at
think
all.
you're absolutely right that it's a mindset. It's like, some people going to the office 8 to 5 would probably drive you crazy.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset. I mean, you're trading security um, for maybe some things you give up in life. But great answer, Jeremy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Whitney, hi.
Yeah, she snuck on there. She was hidden for a long time.
I
Yeah.
was just listening, but I just wanted to thank you because I think my soul needed to hear that because I'm in a similar situation. Although I don't have baking, which clearly the way to go because that's like you actually can make money baking. So that's pretty awesome. But just the world right now and the unknowns, and I feel like as a theater person, we've had to become much more okay with such things. But it's interesting because I still have like my mom who's on this call and my sister and all of them want answers of like, when am I leaving? When am I staying? All this stuff. And I just don't have them. And I'm okay with that, but they don't seem to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
And I appreciate just from my experience, it's been similar where if I give because I want to, money always comes in, a job comes in, and sometimes I have to say I like look at my life and will say it's more interesting than some of my friends who have the 9 to 5 and the kids in the house and the whole thing. But you're not alone in this. I just wanted to say, and because I needed to hear that I'm not alone in it as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Wolf?
And I think there's a flip side to it that COVID is teaching us that there really is no security in a lot of things. And I think people like you that are creative, Jeremy, are actually experiencing an advantage over people that are maybe very structured and the bottom just fell out and they're probably not as well equipped as you seem to be to shift course and just reinvent yourself.
Yeah, that may be. It's a double-edged sword. I'm not going to lie, because being nimble and I tell people I'm really good at picking up and moving and finding my way. Like, just drop me anywhere, most anywhere in the world, and I can figure it out. And it'll be a little painful and there'll be a lot of adjusting, and I'll get there. Language, culture, resources, I can figure it out. I've lived among extreme poverty and I've lived in Paris, next to extreme wealth. And that's I feel really good about that. It can also be it can be a crutch. It can be a way to not find depth in your community. It can be a way of saying, yeah, this isn't working for me. I'm going to pick up and leave. And I have a 7-year itch. I lived in Seattle for 7 years. I lived in Chicago for 7 years. And I just rolled over my 7-year mark in Missoula. And each time I told myself, I don't want to just leave. And as I got older, like leaving Chicago, I didn't allow myself to leave. Like, nope, you can't do this again. Time to be a grown-up. And I needed the excuse of, I'm leaving for a job. That's okay. That's okay. I wanted to leave because I was getting fed up, but I wouldn't let myself because I'm a grown up, and it's time for you to have friends where you live and not always somewhere else. And so as soon as I got the job offer, it was like, that's different. That's different. I have permission now. And I had to reconcile that as soon as the job, poof. I had to really deal with that. And Missoula has been really challenging for me. Because I came here very intentionally. Of all the places in the world, I want to be right here. Like, I don't want to be in Mongolia or New York City or Johannesburg. I want to be right here. Glacier is like my spirit home. And this is where I want to be. But it's really hard to be here economically. Lack of diversity. I really miss languages, skin tones, different foods, different mindsets. When I come across people who are really well traveled, or they're transplants, usually from the East Coast rather than the West Coast for some reason, I glom onto them. I'm like, just I drink that in. It's like this cultural thirst that I have. And so that's really challenging for me. And also, like, when you have a craft, I've done theater and pastry for 25 or 30 years, and I'm offered a job baking at $11 an hour, maybe $12 an hour, doing what I do. It hurts. It's like, like, dude, I was making that in 1999 as an apprentice. So I would rather do something else, a day laborer or substitute teaching, also for $11 an hour. That hurts. So yeah, and I'm not going to lie, I reckon with leaving all the time. It's challenging.
Hey, Jeremy.
Jim?
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy. I have a feeling, I know what you're talking about, but I have this comment that I tell people, and I'm going to tell you right now that, in my opinion, Missoula is the very best place to have hard times.
There's truth there. There's truth. I get to, my dog walk would be a vacation hike for other people, for my former self. Like, I would have to fly across the country to do what I do on a daily basis and call it a vacation. And I don't take that for granted. I stop my dog. I'm up on Waterworks or the North Hills or Blue Mountain or wherever. You just like a daily something. I got a couple hours. I'm going to get out there and come back and get back to recording or whatever. And I'll stop in the middle, just out of nowhere. I'll just stop, like throw the brakes on, and I'll just be looking around, and I'll inadvertently yell my dog's name, like, Sadie. She'll look at me, what? I'm like, this is our backyard. Check this out, And she'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, going off on that again. And she'll go off sniffing. But it's like, I want to grab her and be like, this is why we're here. Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you very much. We've reached the end of the time that you're supposed to be committed to. We appreciate your story and wish you the best of luck. I do want to say that next week we have what sounds like it's going to be an interesting talk from somebody that Ken has introduced us to, Andrea Steerley. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She and her husband have been spending, I don't know how long, trying to figure out how to make drugs out of the Berkeley pit. Uh, And Jeremy, if you'd like to join us, ask Sandy to send you the link because you're certainly welcome. And the week after that, Jim Harmon has arranged for the head of the library to tell us what's going on with the public library and the move that they're making. So that's what we have coming up for the next 2 weeks. Make sure you mark your calendars and please don't tune in until Wednesday morning. Thank you very much, everybody. And Jeremy, thanks again.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, if you all want to stick around, I'm going to leave. I'll make someone else the host. Wolf, can I make you the host? Oops, Wolf's gone.
Whitney, where did Whitney go? Hey,
Whitney's gone.
okay, is Whitney still in Missoula or is she in California? Sandy?
She's here living at her dad's right now in Missoula, and then she'll come and live with me. She
Oh, good.
flip-flops.
Good, good.